There is a hidden architecture inside the mind that most people never see. It is not visible, but it shapes everything: thoughts, emotions, reactions, decisions, relationships, and the entire trajectory of a life. This architecture is made of patterns, and the shocking truth is this: the mind is not reacting to life. The mind is reacting to patterns built long before the present moment arrived. Someone raises their voice slightly, and the mind does not hear just a voice. It hears echoes of a familiar emotional atmosphere from childhood. Someone delays a reply to a message, and the mind does not wait patiently. It fills the silence with narratives shaped by past abandonment or rejection. A small challenge appears, and the mind does not evaluate it fairly. It predicts failure using old memories, not present reality. None of these reactions are chosen. They are patterned. And because they are patterned, they can be understood, observed, and eventually mastered. This is where the thought pattern mastery framework begins, with the radical understanding that thought does not arise from nowhere. Thought emerges from internal architecture, and that architecture can be mapped, understood, and rewritten. Most people spend their entire lives believing their thoughts are spontaneous reactions to external events. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the mind actually works. The mind is not a mirror reflecting reality. The mind is a pattern recognition machine that compares every new moment to old experiences stored in memory, emotion, and belief. This means the present moment is almost never experienced as it actually is. It is experienced through the filter of the past. A conversation that should feel neutral feels threatening because it resembles a conversation that once caused pain. A moment of uncertainty that should feel manageable feels catastrophic because it echoes a time when uncertainty led to loss. A person who should feel safe feels dangerous because they remind the mind of someone who once hurt it. The mind is not lying. The mind is simply following its programming. And programming can be changed. This is where the first mini Gancho emerges naturally. If the mind is following patterns, and patterns can be changed, why do most people never change them? The answer lies in the fact that patterns operate beneath conscious awareness. They are invisible. They feel like truth. They feel like reality. They feel like the only way things could possibly be. Bringing patterns into consciousness is the first act of mastery. And this is exactly what the thought pattern mastery framework does. The framework begins with a simple but profound observation. Thought patterns form in stages. Understanding these stages is like learning to read the mind's own internal language. The first stage is the trigger stage. This is the spark, the moment something external or internal activates the pattern. It might be a facial expression, a tone of voice, a sensation in the body, a memory that surfaces, a noise, a moment of uncertainty, a text that does not arrive, a comment that lands wrong, or even just a thought about the future. The trigger itself is neutral. A raised eyebrow is just a facial muscle contracting. A moment of silence is just the absence of sound. A mistake is just a deviation from intention. But the mind rarely treats triggers as neutral. It instantly assigns meaning to them. And this is where the pattern truly begins. The second stage is the meaning assignment stage. This happens so quickly, often in milliseconds, that it feels like direct perception rather than interpretation. But it is interpretation. The mind creates meaning based on memory, conditioning, emotional habits, and previous experiences. Someone does not respond to a message, and the mind instantly interprets this as rejection, not as someone being busy. A partner seems distant, and the mind interprets this as loss of love, not as someone having a difficult day. A mistake happens, and the mind interprets this as evidence of fundamental inadequacy, not as a learning opportunity. The meaning is not in the trigger. The meaning is created by the mind. And the meaning is created based on what the mind learned long ago, not what is actually true right now. This is why different people react so differently to the exact same moment. They are not reacting to the moment. They are reacting to their own internal meaning-making system. The third stage is the emotional activation stage. After meaning is assigned, the body responds. The mind creates a story, and the body reacts as if the story is absolutely true. The heart beats faster. Muscles tense. The stomach tightens. Breathing becomes shallow. The nervous system shifts into a state of alert. This emotional activation is powerful because it makes the thought pattern feel real. But here is the crucial insight. The pattern came first. The emotion followed. The emotion did not create the pattern. The pattern created the emotion. This distinction is everything. Because if emotions follow patterns, then mastering patterns means mastering emotions. And emotions that are mastered no longer control behavior. The fourth stage is the narrative amplification stage. Once an emotion is activated, the mind does not stop there. It reinforces the emotion by creating more thoughts in the same direction. If the initial interpretation was fear, new fearful thoughts appear. If the initial interpretation was shame, memories of similar moments arise. The mind begins collecting evidence, not to discover truth, but to reinforce the pattern. It becomes a spiral. The mind thinks fearful thoughts, which activate fear, which generates more fearful thoughts, which deepens the fear. The mind thinks shameful thoughts, which activate shame, which generates more shameful thoughts, which intensifies the shame. This is why small triggers can become large internal storms. This is why a single misunderstanding can spiral into a crisis inside the mind. The spiral is not random. It is patterned, and spirals, once recognized, can be interrupted. The fifth stage is the behavioral expression stage. This is where thought patterns become visible through behavior. Someone withdraws. Someone overexplains. Someone becomes angry. Someone avoids. Someone pleases excessively. Someone hesitates. Someone overcompensates. These behaviors feel like choices, but they are the natural outputs of the internal patterning system. The body acts out the story the mind believes. The person does not decide to withdraw. Withdrawal emerges naturally from the pattern. The person does not decide to over-explain. Over-explaining emerges naturally from the pattern. The pattern generates the behavior automatically. And this is why mastering thought patterns means mastering this final stage by influencing every stage before it. Change the trigger interpretation, and the emotion changes. Change the emotion, and the narrative changes. Change the narrative, and the behavior changes. Change the behavior, and the identity begins to shift. At this point, something becomes obvious. If a pattern can be mapped into 5 stages, then a pattern can be altered at any of those 5 stages. This is the foundation of the thought pattern mastery framework. It is not about fighting the mind. It is about understanding its architecture and then consciously choosing to redesign it. But this framework becomes far more powerful when the 3 internal engines behind thought patterns are understood. These engines operate beneath the surface of awareness, but they influence everything above it. The first engine is the memory engine. This includes not only conscious memories, but emotional memories, experiences that were felt before they were fully understood. A child does not need to consciously remember being criticized to carry the emotional imprint of criticism. The memory engine stores these imprints, and these imprints color perception, trigger emotional reactions, and shape meaning assignment in the present. Old emotions stored in the body can activate current patterns even when the present moment is completely safe. This is why someone might feel intense anxiety in a situation that is objectively safe. The memory engine is responding to echoes, not to actual danger. The second engine is the belief engine. Beliefs act as filters that shape how the mind interprets reality. Beliefs formed in early life become default explanations for adult experiences. If someone learned belief patterns such as people are unpredictable, love is conditional, mistakes lead to punishment, I am not enough, or the world is dangerous, the mind will interpret neutral events through these lenses. A partner being quiet becomes evidence that people are unpredictable. A friend not texting back becomes evidence that love is conditional. A small failure becomes evidence that mistakes lead to punishment. The belief engine determines which thoughts appear more frequently and which patterns are reinforced most strongly. Change the belief, and the entire interpretation system changes with it. The third engine is the identity engine. Identity is the collection of statements the mind repeats about what and who someone is. These might include the anxious one, the responsible one, the one who overthinks, the one who must stay quiet, the one who is broken, or the one who is not worthy. The identity becomes a template for thought patterns. The mind gravitates toward thoughts that match identity. If someone identifies as the anxious one, the mind will generate anxious thoughts. If someone identifies as the one who is not enough, the mind will generate thoughts of inadequacy. Change the identity, and the pattern changes with it. This is why conscious identity work is so powerful. It rewires the entire thought pattern system from the foundation. At this point, a mini Gancho emerges naturally. If thought patterns come from memory, belief, and identity, what would happen if these three inner engines were brought into consciousness and deliberately reshaped? The second half of the thought pattern mastery framework is about mastery, the practical techniques that shift thought patterns from automatic to intentional. The first technique is pattern spotting. This involves noticing repeated internal reactions across different situations. The situations may appear completely unrelated on the surface. Someone is criticized at work. Someone is quiet in a relationship. Someone makes a mistake. Someone is rejected socially. These situations seem different, but the internal response is almost identical. The same emotional activation, the same narrative, the same behavior. Recognizing the pattern is the doorway to mastery. Once the pattern is seen, it cannot operate invisibly anymore. The mind begins to question its own automatic responses. The pattern loses its spell. The second technique is the pause and observe method. This involves creating a deliberate pause, even just 2 or 3 seconds, between the moment a pattern activates and the moment a reaction happens. During this pause, the mind is observed. What thoughts are appearing? The body is observed. What sensations are present? The story is observed. What narrative is being told? Observation breaks identification. The pattern loses momentum. The emotional charge decreases. The person is no longer fused with the pattern. They are observing it. And in that observation, choice becomes possible. This simple pause interrupts the entire cascade of the pattern. It is one of the most powerful tools available. The third technique is the meaning rewrite. This technique focuses on altering the second stage of the pattern, the meaning assignment. Instead of accepting the automatic interpretation, the mind offers an alternative meaning that is grounded, neutral, and not shaped by old memories. This does not mean forcing positivity or denying reality. It means offering options. For example, maybe this silence has nothing to do with me. Maybe this discomfort is just an old pattern surfacing, not a sign of actual danger. Maybe this moment is safe even if my mind says otherwise. Maybe this person is having a difficult day, not rejecting me. Offering alternative meaning begins to retrain the mind. It loosens the grip of the automatic interpretation. It introduces flexibility into a system that has become rigid. The fourth technique is emotional decoding. Instead of reacting to emotion, the emotion is examined with curiosity. What is the sensation? Where is it felt in the body? What memory does it resemble? Is the intensity related to the present moment or the past? Emotional decoding transforms emotional activation into information rather than reaction. The emotion becomes data, and data can be understood, processed, and released. This technique alone can reduce the power of emotional storms dramatically. The fifth technique is narrative dismantling. This involves gently challenging the stories that arise from emotional states. These stories often sound absolute. This always happens. I can't handle this. This is who I am. Nothing will ever change. I am broken. Narrative dismantling introduces nuance. It disrupts the spiral. It brings the pattern back into awareness. Instead of accepting this always happens, the mind asks, is that actually true? When was the last time this didn't happen? Instead of accepting, I can't handle this, the mind asks, have I handled difficult things before? What did I do? Narrative dismantling is not about forced positivity. It is about honest questioning that breaks the spell of the pattern. The sixth technique is behavioral reversal. This is one of the most powerful tools in the entire framework. It involves doing the opposite of the pattern's usual behavior. If the pattern withdraws, the behavior chosen is gentle engagement. If the pattern pleases excessively, the behavior chosen is healthy boundary. If the pattern over-explains, the behavior chosen is silence. If the pattern avoids, the behavior chosen is approach. Behavior rewires the identity engine. It signals to the mind that a new pattern is emerging. It tells the nervous system that the old survival strategy is no longer needed. Behavioral reversal is not about forcing yourself to be someone you are not. It is about consciously choosing a different response and allowing the identity to reorganize around that new choice. At this stage, something humorous becomes obvious. One of the funniest realizations in this entire journey is how predictable the mind actually is. The same trigger, the same interpretation, the same emotional activation, the same narrative, the same behavior. It is like watching a series rerun, different actors, same storyline. The mind is running the same program over and over, expecting different results. The moment this predictability becomes obvious, the mind loses its mystery. And when it loses mystery, it becomes far easier to master. There is something liberating about recognizing that the mind is not chaotic. It is just patterned. And patterns can be learned, understood, and changed. But the final layer of the thought pattern mastery framework is the most transformative. It is the shift from "the mind is doing this to me" to "the mind learned this long ago, and now it can learn something new." This shift is profound. It moves from victimhood to agency. It turns the mind from an adversary into a student. And a student can be taught. A student can grow. A student can unlearn old patterns and learn new ones. This shift in perspective changes everything about the journey of mastery. Thought pattern mastery is not about eliminating patterns. The mind will always use patterns. That is how the mind works. Mastery is about choosing them consciously. It is about creating patterns that support clarity, authenticity, emotional safety, and aligned behavior. It is about bringing memory, belief, and identity into conscious awareness so thought stops being a reaction and becomes a tool. It is about recognizing that the mind is not the enemy. The mind is simply following old instructions. And old instructions can be updated. When someone sees their thought patterns clearly for the first time, something extraordinary happens. A space opens inside, a space where choice becomes possible. Old narratives lose their authority. Emotional activation becomes manageable. Behavior becomes intentional. The identity begins to shift from patterned to conscious. And life begins to shift from reactive to chosen. This is the promise of the thought pattern mastery framework. It is not a promise of perfection. It is a promise of awareness. And awareness is the foundation of all real change. If this message resonates, if something in these words awakened recognition about the patterns running inside your own mind, consider subscribing to this channel for more content on consciousness, deep psychology, internal patterns, emotional mastery, and spiritual psychological awakening. Like this video if it brought clarity or insight. Share it with someone who might benefit from understanding their own thought patterns more deeply, and leave a comment describing one pattern you have noticed within yourself. What trigger activates it? What meaning does your mind assign? What emotion follows? The conversation continues below, and every voice matters in this community of awakening minds.